Hello everyone and welcome back to Callsign Charlie Models for part 2 of the Italeri 132nd Panavia Tornado. Going on the last video, we got done with all the forward fuselage section minus a few little small odds and ends that will be added after the at the end of the build. So moving on, what we're going to be starting on are the horizontal stabilizers slash elevators right here, and I got the first two cut off the sprue, and there were rather large connection points for this, so I cut it off away from the sprue, and then I'm just gonna come in and kind of nick it off a little bit closer when it's off of the sprue, and then we're gonna sand that down to get that fixed. So getting that done, and after that's all done, we'll get it glued together and then attached to the fuselage. So I need to replenish my Tamiya quick acting cement. Okay, we do have a little seam line along the front edge right there that I'm going to need to take care of. We're going to let that fully dry. Actually, what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and get the putty on, let that dry. Okay, we're going to let that putty dry for a little bit, and then we'll come back in and we will sand that down. I got a little bit more to put on right here. As you can see, like the extremely thick connection points to the sprue on this piece right here. So I'm cutting it off a little bit away from the piece so I don't get any stress fractures in the piece. And then after that, I'll come in and I'll cut it closer to. See, that's why you don't cut it right alongside. Now I have a divot right there that I'm going to have to fill with putty. Alright, up next, what I'm going to do is after sanding this, the problem with doing that sometimes is you get a little bit of a flat spot on the leading edge. And the way I combat that is I have these scrapers. As you can see, I think I got these off of eBay. I've had them for a few years now, but they have different radiuses on curves here. And I have a few of them with all the different sizes right here. But it's called a gun barrel grinding tool on here. So it definitely helps with getting the seam lines or other stuff like that. You just take it, you find the correct radius, which, not that one. Looks like, yeah, this one. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to run it across here. What it's going to do is it's going to scrape and get that curve back to the plastic. It just takes a couple of them and that is all done and set. So this stabilizer is ready to go. Then I have a piece to add to the back end of that. But we're going to take care of this one first. Even helps to take out seam lines on leading surfaces too. With this piece, I'm just putting just a little dot of glue on the outside of this because I do not want it to weld onto the actual fuselage, so that way I can still move these around. It's going to help with paint and all that. So but it's also a limiter to how far up or down these can go. So as you can see right there, perfect. Alright, now get the other one done. Alright, so those are on and ready to go. All set. So we're going to let these dry. Put those off to the side for now. And up next, you're going to start working on the engines. Okay, so we got our instructions out. I'm going to keep this foam. It's going to help mask off the cockpit and all that stuff when we're ready for paint. Alright, so now what we're going to be doing is sawing all of this stuff off of the casting blocks right here. It is fairly thin, so it is rather easy to take off of the blocks. So no issue with that. And then these are 3D printed. So I can get these open. You see the detail on that right there. Gonna look really, really nice. Got a ring right here. Another one. Just getting everything set up. Also, I have a box for all my old knives and stuff. That way when I do throw it away, the garbage guys aren't getting cut with my my razor blades. So if you're throwing away your blades, think of them as well. Even though the majority of trash or garbage trucks now are done mechanically, to prevent the sanitation workers from getting cut with the razors or needles or whatever, because people just don't really care about them. So that's much better. So that's how that's going to look. I don't have to worry about cutting off the block for R1. Alright, so these are the 3D printed parts on here, and the way, hold on, let me zoom out a little bit more. The way I take care of this is I cut off, using a knife, I cut off the supports from the base, right? So that way I'm not risking breaking any of the parts or chipping any of the print, the actual print. And then what I'll do is, after I'm done with getting it off of the support base, I'll come back in with my hobby knife, and then I can cut off all the supports. Even if, I mean, some of the supports are just falling off the actual print with me doing it from the bottom, because these supports are so small. But I mean, it's just a way, just to help. That way you don't take the chance of breaking anything on the print. There we go. First one is done. And like I said, I come back in with the knife and just, it comes off nice and easy right there. Doesn't take much to get that done. Alright, so these burner can rings are absolutely gorgeous. They look good with all the supports and everything around it, but when you get that all cut off, these look absolutely amazing. And when you get this painted up and weathered, it's going to look even better. The problem is, it's going to be very far down in the exhaust, and you're barely going to be able to see it. So that's one issue that we're going to have with that. I'm just going to do a quick test fit. I think this is roughly how it's going to look. Alright, so we got all that done. Messed around with that for a little bit, and up next what we're going to do is I'm going to start painting this all up. I'm going to go off camera to do that. I haven't gotten a jig to a camera jig set up to my paint booth yet, which is something I definitely on the wish list for the channel, to get a jig to attach to the spray booth so I can record some stuff while I am airbrushing. But that's what's going on. I'll be back when I have all the paint done on the exhaust. So I'll be back in 1 second. Alright, we're back, and we got the exhaust all painted and ready for assembly. So everything's done. The way I went about this was, first I primed it with my Stynylrez Res black primer. Okay, and then after that I went and got everything done with a base coat of the AK Extreme Metal matte aluminum number 488. Then after that was done, I went through and everything except for the interior pieces, or the inside, I hit up with the AK-486 jet exhaust right here, from Extreme Metal. Then after that was done, I misted on a AK-484 burnt metal, and then after that I did another like small detail misting of a pale burnt metal from AK number 485. So that was the burnt areas of the exhaust. Now for the interior, you know how sometimes they have that streaking effect. What I used for that was, first I hit it with the MRP 246 light Arctic gray. I like this because it's not straight white, it's white gray. It's a white with a little bit of a tinge to it, so it's not just like boom in your face white, it's just a little grungy white right there. Then after that I hit up the MRP Super Matte Black for the exhaust streaks that go down the exhaust, and you'll see that here in a second. Then to clear everything in, I hit it with the Alcalad 2 Lacquer Clear Coat Matte right here. So these are the exhaust tips right here, nice and metalish right here. I hit the inside burner with a little bit more burnt metal than what I did the exterior ring right there. And then for these right here, hit it with the burnt metal and pale burnt metal, and it came out really nice. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. And then for the insides of the exhaust, I'm trying to get it to focus, but you can see it just kind of looks grungy, looks like the exhaust, you don't have the straight perfect lines coming out. Just misted that on right there, just kind of, and it's same thing with this side as well. This one I kind of went a little bit darker because this is the very beginning of it, so this is where it's really going to be collected right here and then go out. And as you can see, when it's all together, I painted these together, so I matched them up with the notch, which is, where she go? There's a notch somewhere in there. There it is. Gotta hit it right there. So I got it together like so, and then I painted it so the streaks line up on that. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start getting everything together, going through the instructions on here. So I'm gonna stop talking so I can speed ramp the time and get this done for you in a couple of, like maybe a minute. So enjoy. Alright, so that is the exhaust finished up for the most part. I still have the reverse thrusters to go on, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be attaching the arms. I'll have to see. But again, that's how these are looking right now. Looking pretty good. Find a flashlight. To show off the inside. As you can see right there, you're not going to be able to see much of it. If you're looking down it without the light, you can see it pretty well in person, but again, that's how that's looking right now. And we have both of them side by side, like so. I'm pretty happy with how those turned out. Now, these aren't going to be added to the model until the very end. I'm just going to be using them for test fits here and there, just to make sure everything's good to go. But so far, that is done. So up next, we'll be working on some more engine area in the back, and then starting off with the wings. So we'll be back in 1 second. Alright, so moving forward, I got the exhaust done earlier, and then went ahead and decided that we're going to get all of this tail end assembled and into the model. And then after that's done, we're going to mask it all off, so that way when I'm painting everything, it won't get hit with overspray or anything like that. But also that way I can solve any fit issues between this area and the main fuselage prior to painting everything. I think that's just going to make life a little bit easier, and doing a couple quick test fits, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any issue with the mating of this ring and the fuselage. Now what I did have to do was, there was a little lip right here for the kit part that I needed to shave off to get these to fit properly, along with the reverse thrusters. So got that in, and then we get, I think it's this side goes in right here, and it fits pretty well right now. So just like so, and right there. Now you might notice that these are all painted with the aluminum, and I still have multiple different coats to paint. But I did think that I had another bag of pipettes in one of my drawers, and come to find out I don't, and I don't have any more pipettes. So I ordered on Amazon, and of course the one thing that Amazon takes a week to deliver are my pipettes. So those should be here Saturday. And then so this is on standby until I get those pipettes in. Also, I gotta paint these, the body color right here. I got the inside painted with the aluminum, and I'm gonna weather that up to be the burnt metal as well, along with the actuators going for that. Now with the reverse thrusters, I did not add the photo etch into the inside, because when you do that, with especially with the resin exhaust, it does affect the fit of the exhaust. So that being said, I left that off. And also, you can't see them anyway, so unless you're having the reverse thrusters open, that's the only way you're going to see them. If you're going to have it closed, you're not going to see them. And then I also I checked out my other Tornado just to make sure I was right. And it was a good thing, because I was going to leave these actuator arms off altogether. But after looking at it, you can see them. You can't see much of them. You can see that they're there. And then so I went ahead and I'm going to paint those. So now that this is on standby until I get my paint pipettes, we're going to go ahead and move forward, and we're going to get the wings assembled. So moving forward here, as we see, got to get these pieces all done, and then we're going to put in our spoilers. We're going to put those in the down position, and then we're going to use the slats in the extended and the flaps down version as well. So getting started with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking so we can get to work. Got the wrong one. Alright, so both main portions of the wings are done. Up next, what we'll be working on is getting the slats done and also the flaps done for this while we wait for those pipettes to come in. And then after that's done, I honestly don't know how much more we can do. Maybe start prepping the upper fuselage, and I think that's about the extent of where we can go without having everything else, the engines done right now and getting to the point where I want to be. But wings went together very well. No real issues with that. The only issue I had was getting the tabs to melt down. I was trying to use this screwdriver right here, but I guess the metal that is the screwdriver will not hold heat. So I ended up just grabbing an extra razor blade and using that, and worked fairly well. Also, do not press the plastic all the way down onto the sway bar, because otherwise you just counteracted the feature. So and the only reason why I'm leaving it like this and movable right now is so that way, number one, when I'm painting it, I can sweep the wings back and forth, and also that way when I get it into final position, I can make sure the pylons are all square and going the right direction. So that's why I am leaving those like that right now. I have a little bit more glue to do right in here. But other than that, the wings went together fairly well. No real issues. Very careful with these tiny glass parts. They are very tiny, and they're just asking to ping off into oblivion. So that's going to do it for right now on the Tornado. We'll be back in a second to start working on the flaps and slats. So let's see you in 1 second. Alright, we're back with the Tornado, and it's time for a major milestone of this build, and that is getting the two fuselage halves together. So first I'm going to remove the clamps from yesterday, get those off, and looks like we have a good fit for the most part. Definitely going to need to use some putty and sanding right in here, and also along where the speed brake meets the fuselage down here. So perfect fit up here, but down on the sides, again on this one, also needs a little bit of a putty right there. And then also we're going to need to put a little bit of putty right in here as well. But everything else, pretty much perfect on that. Let's see, make sure I did sand down this part right here from getting the aft landing gear in. But let's see how this goes together. I know it's going to be a little bit of a squeeze to get it in, but we should be able to. Okay, top is in. Top is in, but the bottom, as you see here, we have a decent gap, but I can fill that with plastic card. But the bottom fit and the top fit is right there where I need it to be. So go ahead with the glue. And let's get this glued in, and then afterward I'll fill that with plastic card, those little gaps. Sorry, I gotta hold this where my hand is blocking the view, but we'll see here in a second. I'm trying to keep it tight. Yeah, we're gonna have some putty to go in right along this seam as well. So we'll get all that taken care of before we start doing the pylons and all that. We'll do that probably up next after I let this dry, probably overnight. I probably won't be doing anything else with the Tornado while this is fully setting and curing. So the top side looks pretty good. Again, just a little bit of putty, just to make sure that that is flush and we have a smooth transition between these two areas. And then on the bottom side as well, gonna need some plastic card and putty on that. So I gotta go get my dog from outside, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna take this with me because I'm holding it in this position so it dries. Alright, I let Charlie back in, so now we just get to sit here and hold this in position for a few more minutes, and then we should be good. You had a nice nose shot of the aircraft. Again, just letting that set. I'm gonna get some plastic card, fill that gap right there. Shouldn't be much to take care of. Nice thin plastic card sheet, and then putty along the bottom side here. Once I can remove my finger, I can show you better. Again, I'm not really worried about the intakes because I do have the intake covers coming, so that problem's gonna be fixed right there. So I'm not worried about that issue. It's the same on the other side, but something just to look forward to if you are going to be building this and you want to have the intake cup with no intake covers. I'm also going to glue back in here. Okay, up next I got some various different thicknesses of plastic card. We're going to see which one fits the best on there. That one's too thin. This one's probably too thick. It's like Goldilocks of scale modeling. I think if I double up on that, we should be fine. Let's just do a couple more. That one would be good, but it's going to separate it too much. I think this is the one. So what I'm going to just do is I'm going to cut it in blocks. We're going to just stick with one, because if I put in that second one, unless I go with the really one that was like paper thin. Okay, yeah. So we're going to use this one for the initial. So that gap is good. Right there, we just gotta wait for that to fully dry, and then we'll cut it off and sand it down so it's nice and smooth, and then we'll just use putty to fill in that little gap right there. And then okay, we're gonna let those dry for a little while. Woohoo, starting to look like a tornado. Alright, so with it being the quick setting stuff from Tamiya, that should be dry enough, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and trim this down right here on both of them. Okay, so now try to sand this down. Doing the initial sanding right now, and then afterwards we're going to come in with putty. And really smooth this out. But right now, so as you can see, that side gap is almost done. We just have a little bit more to do where the dust is filling in that part right there, but that should be good. We'll just come in with some putty and really smooth that out, and then we're also going to have to do some riveting and re-scribing right here, but I'm trying to lightly sand it as much as possible so that way I don't lose any of that detail. Then we flip it over to the other side and we just repeat for the other side and get better hold on it. Okay, so that part pretty smooth, and again, when I put some putty down on it, it's really gonna help that transition from the forward fuselage to the aft fuselage. But as you can see, like when I take my sander across there, it does have a little bit of a ridge where it gets stuck on. So again, I'm just gonna sand that down a little bit more. There we go. Oh yeah, that's almost perfect right there. Get some putty in there along the bottom here, and then also I'm going to do the putty along this side too. I'm going to go ahead and get all the putty knocked out along here and where I need to along the fuselage, because it's going to be a lot easier now than what it is going to be when I get all of this on and the back end done and all that. So definitely going to start taking care of that now to make life a little bit easier. So we'll go ahead and start spreading the putty. Then we can let the putty dry overnight. That's what we're going to do. So, alright, and then for this seam, what I'm going to do is, because it's kind of a strength area that needs to be done, I'm going to use sprue goo. So I just took a bottle of Tamiya cement that was, it was not almost empty, but pretty close to empty. It's where the brush really starts to struggle to get any glue. And then I took one of the sprues and I cut it off into little bits, and then I threw all those little bits into the Tamiya cement, and then the cement, as you know, melts the plastic together. So what this does is it just melts all those little bits, and what it creates is a kind of a plastic putty that is very strong. It's like when you sand it down, it's going to be just like you're sanding down actual plastic. So that's what I'm going to use for this area right here, but I am going to spread it kind of thin because I don't want to take the chance of losing any of the detail down here. So, but I do want to make sure that it doesn't shrink on me. You just apply it like a regular . And this definitely does take about 20 hours to dry completely. So you do not want to start sanding this before it's completely dry, because otherwise you will create a mess. Okay, so that's on. Going back to our regular putty now. And this putty is just the Tamiya white putty right here. So it should sand down fairly easily. Alright, so that's it for the putty for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set and let this dry pretty much overnight. I'm not going to touch this again until tomorrow morning. And then after that's done, come back in, sand that all down, get that nice and flush on everything. So it's really going to help. I do have this area right up here to take care of. So now we're all set on the putty. Let that dry overnight. So tomorrow what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to come in, sand everything down. Start off with the 400 grit sanding stick right here, or sanding paper depending on the area. And oh my god. Also, when you're doing this, you need to be very careful about where you're putting your fingers, because you can pull the putty off that you just put on. So let that set, and we'll come back tomorrow. We'll sand down everything, starting off with the 400 and working all the way up to make sure it's back to a polished finish on here. And then after that we can start working on the ventral fins. Also, my pipette should be in today, hopefully, so that way I can finish painting the exhaust area. I think I might get that attached before I get the horizontal or vertical stabilizer on as well, just to make masking a little bit easier, because I am still going to have to fight this area, but I should, because this moves, I should be able to kind of finagle my way around it. So again, I'll be back in 1 second when we start sanding this guy. Alright, we're back with the Tornado, and the putty has set overnight to dry, so we shouldn't have any issues with any of that. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my wet sanding. I got a little piece of 400 grit sandpaper right here. I can't find my Tamiya sanding sponges for this. I can find the ones that are like 1,000 and 1,500 and 2,000, 3,000, but I can't find my starting out point, so I'm just going to go with this. I would typically go with the Tamiya sanding sponges, but like I said, I can't find them anywhere, so we'll see how this makes do. I'm just going to start off up here, and I'm going to get all this putty sanded off. I'm using wet, so that way it kind of controls the dust, and we don't have to worry about the dust getting all over the place. I do the finger test, and this is absolutely silky smooth going across there, so I know I'm not going to have any issues with that. I do know that I'm going to have to rescribe this line and also a panel line that goes across here, but with using plastic card, to fill the gap, it did add a more solid structure for the scribing to go onto versus just adding straight putty in there, which kind of sometimes can be kind of iffy on your rescribing on that. So just working on that. We do have a little bit of a point right up here. It's a little bit sloppy. I want to try to get taken care of. It's up in that corner. That's a little bit difficult to get to, but we'll get it. And every so often I refresh with a new piece of sandpaper, and I'm using kind of a used, not a fresh sheet of 1 or 400 grit sandpaper. Just it gives it a little bit more worn down. It's not such a harsh abrasion to that. So maybe even starting off with a 600 grit, but again, kind of it works, and I'll just work my way up after this to get the plastic back to a kind of a polished state where it looks nice and smooth. Okay, I think moving forward next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some putty to this bottom seam right here, because I didn't realize that seam initially, but now I've caught it so I can get it taken care of. On that, we do have a few other areas to touch up, like right in here with a little bit of putty, but again, that's why we do this, just double check everything. Alright, so up next we're working on the gap that I filled with the sprue glue right here, using Tamiya old glue and then a bunch of little sprue cutoffs. And this, like I said, dries like it's plastic, so it is going to be a little bit more difficult to sand down, but it is going to be a much stronger weld. Now, I would just recommend doing this on large areas that are easy to get to, because sanding this in a tight area is going to be a absolute nightmare. So just alright, so that's sanded down, but we do have a little bit of still a little gap there, because the putty did have a little bit of shrinkage and fell into the gap. So the gap is filled and it's nice and strong because it is actual plastic. But in order to fill that kind of like shrinkage right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over with some normal Tamiya putty like what we did on the rest of the kit. Hit that area up. Then also, like I said, the other touch-up areas like back here that I need to touch up right there. And then maybe one or two little small areas like right here as well that I just want to get touched up with putty before I start moving on with everything else. And then after that putty's done, I'm gonna go back through and start working up my progression of sanding down from the 400 to 600 to 800 and all the way up to where it's nice and smooth. And then after that we go in and we clear off some of the, as you see right here on this panel, it's got filled with putty dust, but I'm just gonna go clean that out. We're gonna have to rescribe all of this because we're gonna lose a lot of detail there, and then just fixing some other areas that need to be fixed. So let's get our putty out, and I'm gonna go ahead and get off camera here. I'm gonna spread the putty on all these areas like I did earlier, and just lightly spread it across here, and then that way let that set probably overnight again to let it dry. I know I typically don't need to let it dry overnight, but with I got other projects I'm working on too, so gonna let this dry, and then we'll be back tomorrow getting the rest of the putty done. And then after that, my pipettes did come in yesterday, so I can start painting on the exhaust area. So after the putty's all done, we'll get the exhaust area done and then masked off, and then we'll start working on the vertical stabilizer and rudder, and then we have a few other bits to add on to this as well. So that's actually going to do it for part 2 of the Tornado build. And like I said, next week we'll be getting the exhaust on, probably the pylons. We'll finish up all the putty work, and hopefully even maybe at the end of next week we'll have this with primer on. So that's hopefully the goal for next week, and we'll see how that goes. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below if you've built this kit before or anything else. But yeah, so look forward to seeing you guys next week on Tornado Thursday. And yep, have a great day. Stay frosty and happy modeling.